Hello and welcome to the Metropolitan Police Cybercrime webinar, Holding Your Data Hostage. My name is Callum Fraser and I am a member of the Metropolitan Police Cybercrime Unit. What I'm going to do is just introduce the people who we've got with us here today. So firstly, thanks to the Cybergriffin team for hosting these webinars, and to Dave and Rich from the Cybergriffin team who are going to be sitting in this webinar, hopefully not having much to do, helping us out in the background. So let me just introduce the people who we've got here with us today. First of all, we've got Rayhan Shamsi. Rayhan has very graciously agreed to come and chat with us today about when his company, Air Marine, was a victim of ransomware last year. Next up, we have Katie from the MPS. Katie's been a cyber specialist here in the Metropolitan Police Service for the last 6 years, and she's one of the members of our high-tech crime unit. It's her unit that takes the lead on the technical aspects of investigating ransomware. We've also got Paul from the National Cybersecurity Centre. Paul has been a cybersecurity specialist at the NCSC for about 2.5 years, and he's going to be giving us all really helpful and fantastic advice on how to protect ourselves from ransomware. So, welcome and thank you, Rayhan, Katie, and Paul, and thanks for joining us. In addition, we've also got here my colleague Tom Lee. Tom is from the Cybercrime unit along with me, and he's going to be in charge of monitoring the chat for your questions. On that note, a couple of housekeeping points before we get started. Whilst I appreciate many of you might have used Zoom before, in this day and age it's almost necessity, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of options for you. Firstly, you can interact with us throughout this webinar. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see you have a couple of buttons. One's Q&A and one is chat. If you want to ask any of the panelists a question, hit the Q&A button and ask away. Tom is standing by and he's going to be able to highlight any questions to us as we go along. We're planning on having a short Q&A session at the end of each of our segments and a longer Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So if you want to know anything that we haven't covered during the during the segments, then feel free to ask away. If you see questions that pop up that you like, you can hit the thumbs up button and that'll show Tom that more of you want that question's answered, and it makes his job a little bit easier. There's also a chat button. You can send messages to either panelists or to all of your fellow attendees. I've found that the security industry is one of the most welcoming industries out there for open and honest discussions. So feel free to introduce yourselves, ask your peers some questions, or even answer some questions that have come up. However, please be aware, this webinar is being recorded and it is a police event. So please make sure anything that you contribute is appropriate. Don't write anything down that you wouldn't want to be recorded forevermore. Just remember, the internet is written in stone. So without further ado, I'm just going to bring up a quick presentation to describe what today is going to be like. So bear with me a second. Okay, so here we go. Here is today's webinar. First of all, we're going to be talking about what is ransomware and why you should be paying attention. Kind of important, but there you go. Next, we're going to be switching over to talk to Rayhan. We're going to talk about a case study, as I said before, that happened to his company. Then we're going to be moving on to what do the police need. This is what Katie is going to be talking to us about from the Cybercrime Specialist team, and she'll be able to talk to us about what the police need if we need to investigate a ransomware attack. And quite possibly, most importantly of all, we're going to be speaking to Paul J, and he's going to be telling us how we can protect ourselves, the things that we need to do to protect ourselves from ransomware. So, because the Metropolitan Police like to point these things out to you, here we go. Malicious software. Ransomware is malicious software, also known as malware, that prevents you from accessing your computer or data that is stored on your computer. If you do get infected with ransomware, your computer may become locked or the data on it may be stolen, encrypted or deleted. And normally, ransomware asks you to make a payment, which is the ransom, in order to unlock your computer or to access all of your data. However, there is no guarantee you'll gain access to your computer or your files should you do so. So, we in the Metropolitan Police like our graphs, so here we go. These are all taken from the Cyber Breaches Survey of 2020, hopefully of which there should be a link in the chat coming up. This details what happens if you receive a minor breach or an attack. If you have a minor breach or attack, there's only a 19% chance that your company is going to suffer a negative outcome. However, if it's a major breach, for example, ransomware, there is a 54% chance the actual outcome is going to be negative. So this is why ransomware is kind of important to pay attention to. Almost half of all businesses last year reported a cyber attack in the last 12 months. Almost a third of these, so 32%, stated that these attacks happened at least once a week. And 19% of these attacks now include malicious software, for example, ransomware. And small and micro businesses have an average annual loss of £3,110. So those are just the bare basic factors to what ransomware is and why it's kind of important that we pay attention to it and we protect ourselves from it. So that's what we're talking about today. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to invite Rayhan out. So if you, hopefully Rayhan want to share his microphone and his video, and he can talk to us all a little bit about what happened when his company was a victim of ransomware. So first of all, Rayhan, welcome. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, sir.
Welcome. Thank you. No problem.
Right. So without trying to get too bogged down, tell us what happened.
It was actually 2018 April.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And it was Friday. We had some problem with our label printers where we print the labels for the export shipments. And we had one of our IT engineers on the site. And he couldn't actually install the printer onto the server as he was working on my desktop. So he actually asked me if he can jump on the server. So I took him into our computer room, and suddenly I've just realized there was funny looking icons. So
okay.
I then straight away called my IT guys, and they obviously asked me technical sort of questions. They were saying this, that, the other, which I did. And our server wouldn't respond to anything. So we were asked straight away to take the network cable out, which I did again. And then because it was Friday, we couldn't do anything Friday afternoon. So they said, we can only send the engineer on Monday morning first thing. Saturday I couldn't work, so I actually called the office again, the IT guys, and they said, okay, if that is the case, put the cable back for a short time and then carry on working and then take it out, which I did, and I carried on my work.
Mm-hmm.
But comes Monday, because I'm usually off on Monday, and 1:30, I had a call from the office because the engineer was there, and suddenly all the computers were gone, all desktop servers, everything. We couldn't just get an access into it. So I had to run down to the office, and I saw there was nothing. We could see just blank screens. And then we were told that we've been hacked badly. I don't know how it happened. It never happened. The first time it happened in our 23 years of history in the business. So we had great difficulty to sort of carry on our work, but luckily we had our friends and sort of family. We borrowed the laptops, we brought the laptops. And the good thing was the custom entry that we do is web-based. So we had to connect into our mobile phone, hotspot, to log into the internet. We were kind of doing everything manual, basically. And we had an access internet-based email, a kind of a backup, which the only problem was one person at a time, and one person was getting all the emails into one person's email box. So you can imagine we get hundreds of email every day, and that's the day. So one person goes into the computer, check the email, reply, and then the second person goes. Can you imagine? I mean, we've been working really long hours, 11 o'clock, midnight till midnight and stuff like that, just to sort of carry on the business. The IT guys actually sent two other people to sort of, if they can retrieve the data from backup tapes. What it was a shock to us when we found out that even the backup tapes were encrypted.
How often do you actually back up?
We do 7 days.
Okay.
24 hours.
Okay, but the backup disks were encrypted as well?
All the tapes were encrypted. We have 4 weeks tape, Monday to Friday, so like week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. They've tried everything. He just couldn't do anything. So there was only option that our system had to be rebuilt from the scratch. We've lost all our record in our in-house system where we book the jobs, do the custom entries, and it was not easy,
Mm.
till end of August. We were just kind of carrying on manually work. But lucky thing was we had access to the email web base, and we were able to do the custom entries.
How long did it take you to recover completely from, to back to normal operating procedures?
We started off September. It took nearly 4 months.
Wow. Okay, that's not that's a big chunk of your working time taken up with that. How did you actually manage to function? Because you said you just had one email address working. So how did that work in your business?
Basically, this web page email
Mhm.
works is that our email is run kind of no in-house. It's looked after by our IT guys.
Okay.
So they managed to sort of provide us an email address where we can log in, and all email was bouncing back to that web email.
Okay. So overall, what systems were affected? Was it just the email, or was it everything?
Everything, the whole system that we use computer-wise, nothing was left.
Wow.
And it took us nearly 1 month to kind of re-enter those jobs that we were manually booking it. You can imagine how many jobs we're doing daily basis. So it took us nearly a month to bring our jobs back, which we're doing it manually, to update our system.
Whew. Do you know how the ransomware got in?
No, not have a clue.
Wow.
IT guys couldn't just everybody was guessing, even IT guys. Somebody was saying they're from China, from Russia, from some sort of Eastern European company. I can't remember the names.
But we don't know how it actually got in. So did it get in via an email? Was it remote desktop protocol? I mean, do we know anything like that?
We normally are quite good, actually. When we see any sort of suspicious email, we do not open it. We straight away block it.
Okay.
It actually didn't happen into one of our desktop. It actually started with our server. So somebody somehow managed to get into our server, and then they've encrypted all the data that we were sort of, on daily basis.
How much was the ransom? Did you ever find out?
That one answer I can't question, because I was actually dealing the IT side of it, because I think I'm the only one who actually knows. But one of my director was dealing with. His name is David. Tom, I've spoken to.
Okay. So did you have any contingency plans in place before this ransomware happened? Or
You know what? To be honest, no.
Right. Okay.
We never thought that is going to happen. It's one of those things that you can't predict, but we know now. And we were actually planning this sort of in May, that we will actually speak to our IT guys to sort of have a plan to.
Okay, so when all of your fantastic business continuity stuff that you were doing, working off of one email, effectively doing everything offline, that was all off the cuff? That was all making it up as you went along, effectively?
No, we were effective, but like I said, we were kind of morally, we were, our moral was quite high.
Yeah.
So we carried on.
Oh, that's good.
We couldn't sort of afford to lose our business. And as I'm sure everybody knows, that customers don't care. They said, well, it's your problem. You have to sort it out. So we were sort of struggling, very hardly struggling, but we did manage to sort of carry on.
I think that's fantastic stuff. Thank you very much indeed for that. I think we've got some Q&As. I can see the various things popping up from the chat. Tom, what have we got for us?
Yeah, cheers, Callum. Hi, Ron. Yeah, quite a few questions. Some might be more suitable for Paul and Katie, but what? Sorry, hi. What do you do differently now, Rayhan? What lessons have been learnt from this, so to speak, for you as a company? Do you do anything differently now?
It's we have taken some kind of things that should kind of protect us. I can't obviously say that, online, But yes, but like we were going to have more resources to cover these sort of things that, to avoid happening it. But because of COVID-19, everything is like postponed it.
Okay. What was that one?
Well, there's one that popped up here. Is what type of company is yours? Are you a particularly high value target at all?
In a way, yes.
Okay. In a way. And I think there was other one. There's one here that I quite liked. Is that did your ransomware change all the icons itself as a part of it? Is there something that anybody can look out for in particular? Is it, what was it the thing that clued you in that a ransomware occurred?
Well, the icons, what we usually have on our server, it was completely changed to a different icons, and they were like kind of a shadow beside the icons. And that's when it sort of clicked me. There's something definitely wrong because they're not the normal icons. And I've been told that try to put on a safe mode from our IT guys, which didn't happen. We tried it. So I thought, I'm not going to touch it anyway. You need to send one of your IT guys, an engineer who knows more than about me. So we are actually in a freight forward industry, and it's quietly sort of work that people can try to hack it.
Okay, gotcha. I think that's. I mean, Tom, is there anything else on there in particular that people are wanting to ask?
The top one at the moment. Are you still using the same IT company, Rayhan?
We are.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. That's another good question at the top there. If you're unsure how they infiltrated your systems, how can you be secure for a future attack? That's something we might want to come up with later on with Paul J, perhaps. Okay, so Rayhan, thank you very, very much indeed. It is very much appreciated. I appreciate that coming up and talking about this sort of stuff isn't particularly easy. So yet again, thank you so much for coming, and hopefully you can stick around for our big Q&A session at the end. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem at all.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
Feel free to mute your microphone and camera. Rayhan will speak to you in a bit. So.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so next up we have Katie from the Met Police Cybercrime Unit. Katie is, sadly, we will not get to see her lovely face as part of the operational procedures that we have, but Katie is one of the foremost experts we have in the Metropolitan Police with regards to how we investigate cybercrime and ransomware in particular. So Katie, over to you. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I just want to check that everyone can hear me okay. Is that right? Yeah. I've got just a few items that I'm going to run through that are probably quite useful, or that they are quite useful even when we're dealing with a ransomware attack. I just sort of put them into a few bullet points to make it easier to digest. So I'll sort of read those out to you. Before I start with sort of what's helpful for us to go through, it's potentially useful to mention that if you have got cyber insurance, it's worth sort of speaking to them and finding out what guidelines they have for how you respond to an attack, because they might have some essential criteria, which actually probably tallies up with what I'm going to run through, because it allows part of the investigation process. And certainly, if you have got cyber insurance, acting within their scope will make remediation easier for you. So, first of all, you're aware that you've had an attack take place. You can see something's not quite right. Potentially, there'd be a bit of panic going on in the office or wherever. The first thing I would advise to do is, if you think you know which machine everything is starting from, maybe it's in front of you, maybe it's a colleague's computer. The first thing to do would be to disconnect that computer from the network. Whether that's physically cabled in, remove the cable, or if it's a Wi-Fi connection, drop that internet connection, or even your local area connection. What this does is it stops the spread to other machines and potentially your servers, and such as in Rayhan's case, stops the spread to any backups as well. Hopefully that will have a big effect. Whilst keeping the computer powered on will help sort of retain some of the evidence that can be quite useful for us for investigation. It may seem logical at the time to just take the power off the machines, close it down, stop it passing on. However, this can ultimately lose some important information. The second point I've put down is to take clear photographs of the ransom demand that is probably coming up on your screen. You could screenshot them, but then if that screenshot itself becomes encrypted, that's going to be difficult to share. Also, you don't want to connect that computer to a network again after the attack. Ideally, photos are going to be good. We want to see the ransom demand. We're really interested in the payment address. So be sure to capture that in a clear photo, not blurred, because the payment address can be useful in determining where this attack has come from, and might give us some additional information about it. The third piece is probably the most important, is by leaving that computer powered on, we can take a capture of the RAM. The RAM is just the live memory of the machine. I do think this is the single most important thing for forensic analysis. If you have the computer that is the suspected starting point, that could be ideal. What you can get from that is you can see a list of the running processes and services within the computer. These are often altered or injected by ransomware, and an analysis of that can help us work out what's been going on. In addition, you might find in that RAM capture, we may see references to file paths that might be cleared up as in due process of the ransomware sort of making its way through a system. And if you've got those file paths from early on in the attack, again, could be quite useful, especially for us in the analysis stage. The additional thing that is certainly more relevant now than maybe 2-3 years ago is that some of the malware that comes packaged with ransomware is actually fileless. So you may not find a file on your computer, and you could say, that is the ransomware, and that's what we've been looking for. Some of this only runs live. So if we capture the RAM of the first stage machine, for example, we can see what has been running on the machine, and that helps us later down the line with potentially helping you to unlock that system. The fourth thing that I think is again can be quite useful is to capture any server logs. This may be something that your IT department may maintain for you, but certainly ask them to have something available for if an attack takes place. Again, it's all part of the investigation process for us. I mentioned that we may be able to help. It could be that a particular strain of ransomware that you suffered from, we may have seen it before. There is a chance we may have a decryptor tool for it. And so taking all of these points into consideration, we may be able to help determine exactly which strain of ransomware you've been hit with, and then help you to unlock your systems as a result of that. So sort of in total, the last point that I put down is that continued working in partnership with police teams really, really helps us. It seems obvious, but it can help us, it can help you. Even a year down the line, our investigation may still be going on, and we may still be coming back to you with questions. And sometimes for people, it could, they might think, oh, well, it's kind of happened now, it's all right, we'll move on. But it may be that a year down the line is when we may have an answer, for example. So those, I would say, are the key points to consider in advance of when an attack happens, so that when one happens, you are better prepared. If Karen, you're still there, is that
yeah, that's perfect. Thank you very
much.
That's perfect. Thank you very much indeed, Katie. I've seen the Q&A's exploded slightly, so my glamorous assistant Tom, are you there, sir? And you can sort of start showing us some of these Q&A's that people want to know.
Again, lots and lots and lots. Some might be more suitable for Paul. Okay, did you know ransomware still mostly demanded Bitcoin, or do they vary?
Predominantly Bitcoin, yeah, that seems to be the currency of choice.
Are you seeing any other currencies coming through, or is it always cyber currency, cryptocurrency, or is it ever real world currency at all?
No, in the experience here, it's always crypto, and I've only seen Bitcoin, which is quite surprising. I thought they may have branched into some other crypto coins, but certainly Bitcoin seems to be the king still.
Oh, interesting. Another one here is which cables do you disconnect? Is it just the network cable, just the connection to the internet, or is it connection to the wider area network? What needs to go?
That's a good question. Certainly any network connectivity. So any networks at all, isolate that computer, keep it on its own, keep it powered on.
Okay, and you said take photographs. Is that literally with a mobile phone to take a photograph, sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. That can be very helpful, because again, you don't want to have the picture on the infected machine, because you'll then somehow need to get that picture out into the world. Which
course.
Then means connecting the computer back up to a network, thus allowing the ransomware to spread.
I see. That makes perfect sense. I'd have said, well, surely a print screen would work, but no, you are. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. Thank you for that. That's something that I didn't know, folks. There we go. Any other ones that have been flagged up, Tom, that people want to know? Burning questions for Katie, or anything that we can say for our Q&A later on?
Again, a lot of it's. The top one at the moment is basic symptoms, which I think Paul will probably cover.
There's one here that I quite liked, is that when we capture the forensic evidence, are we risking a greater hack? So when we're trying to actually gain access to this and to see what's out there, are we putting ourselves more at risk in doing so?
So when we respond to an incident, you mean when we capture the RAM, for example, from the suspect computer, or from the main computer? Is that how it's meant?
Well, it's like, so obviously when the forensic evidence is being captured effectively, especially if it's encrypted data and it's given to, so if me, the business, gives it to you as the Metropolitan Police, am I giving you information that should be protected under the GDPR? Am I covered?
Oh, I see what you mean. The data would be encrypted. If we were to decrypt it, then we would treat it as we would for any other personal and private information that we get or that we collect as part of an investigation. So that would certainly be protected.
Okay, just making sure that people out there who are worried about that, no need to be, effectively.
No, absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Katie. Really useful stuff there. Yet again, we've got a bit longer Q&A at the end of the session, so if anything we didn't get to, then we'll get through the end of the Q&A. So thank you very much, indeed, Katie. And you're going to be joining us for the Q&A at the end?
I will do, yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Next up, delighted to say we have a member of the National Cybersecurity Centre with us, Paul J. If you'd like to introduce yourself to everybody, and please tell us all about how we as individuals and as businesses can protect ourselves from ransomware moving forward.
Thank you, Callum. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Blimey, yeah, explain all that. It sounds like a fairly simple question, but as you're hearing, ransomware can start off seemingly quite innocuous and then explode and get quite technical. As Callum said, I've been working with the National Cybersecurity Centre now for approximately 2.5 years. My title is the Cyber Protect Engagement Lead, and basically I engage with regional organised crime units and local force protect officers to make sure that the best technical advice from the National Cybersecurity Centre as the national lead, they are the technical experts, that policing is aware of their information, their guidance, their recommendations, and if they are called to any incidents around the country, that they will be given the latest and the most appropriate advice in whatever situation they are addressing. So somebody up in Newcastle should be given the same advice as somebody down in Cornwall, as in Wales, as in Northern Ireland, etc. Ransomware, I'm not a particular ransomware specialist, I will admit that. However, from a lot of work that I've done previously with the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau and NCSC itself, I'm just going to run through some points that hopefully will assist. I'm sure for a lot of people these won't be too new, however they are good, solid, basic advice. Callum's already touched on, what is ransomware, why is it important, and I'm going to give a presentation on ransomware prevention and recovery, if I'm technical enough to get the screen on, hopefully. And hopefully you should be able to see that now. So ransomware, it's malicious software that prevents you from accessing your computer or data that is stored on your computer. It can be that your computer becomes infected with ransomware. The computer itself may be locked. The data on it might be stolen, deleted, encrypted, and somewhere along the lines, people are usually asked to make some form of payment, aka the ransom, in order to unlock the computer or access the data. I saw one of the questions earlier was about what's the current advice on payment. I mean, one of the caveats from the NCSC's point of view is they will always engage with law enforcement and agree whatever the current national guidance is. So one of the dangers of paying the ransom is there's no guarantee you will get access to your computer or your files. I'll cover that a little bit more detail later. And it's that fact that somebody has control over your data or your computer, why it's important to have a recent backup of your most important files and data. And as our guest speaker iterated, unfortunately their backups were encrypted themselves, which of course then doesn't help you to get the data back in any way, shape or form. So I'm just trying to click across. There we go. So it might seem obvious, don't be blackmailed, keep a backup. These slides that I'm showing are taken from a publicly available infographic, a guideline fact sheet called Ransomware Prevention and Recovery. These are all on the National Cybersecurity Centre website, www.ncsc.gov.uk. It's a fantastic source of these sort of information packs and infographics. When you go on the main screen, you can type into the search bar what the subject is you're trying to find. And usually there will be some current guidance or a blog written by some of the technical experts. There will be some information on there somewhere that you will find invaluable, whether that's a private person or a small business, a larger business, etc. Don't be blackmailed, keep a backup. Make regular backups of your most important files. Use external storage. That links into what Katie was saying in terms of network connectivity. One of the big issues that people find is if their backup storage is continually connected to their network and the network gets encrypted, and very often the backup then becomes encrypted and you can't just unfortunately then recover that data. So if you're using external storage, make sure it's not connected all the time. Make the backups regular of your most important files. And also one very important thing that seems obvious again, but sometimes gets missed in all the overall information and processes out there, is check that you know how to restore the files from the backup. And if you're unsure to do this, if you've got an IT company, they should be running that for you, or you can search online, and there's usually, depending on whoever the service provider is or the commercial company, there's lots of forums and information on how you can do that for a particular product. we've already said, make sure your device is not permanently connected to the computer, and there should also be auto backup options that your data, for instance, on your smartphone can automatically copy to the cloud, and that means you'll be able to recover your data quickly by signing back into your account from another device, and obviously make sure it's not linked to the current one if that's the one that's been infected. Okay, protecting your devices and data. Keep your operating system and your apps up to date. There's reasons why there's auto updates on, and people are always saying keep them updated. It's usually because there may have been faults or issues with the old system that people have managed to exploit, and by keeping your systems and regular updates going, they will apply patches or technical bits of information to make sure that any of those exploitable loops or little holes can be patched and turned off. And if you have an antivirus product, please make sure it's turned on, and again, up to date. If people don't keep them up to date, they can fall foul to, as we say, criminals or hackers can find exploits within operating systems and products, and then without, if the company is not aware of them, they can then exploit those issues. It says avoid downloading dodgy apps there. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the word dodgy app. It's basically always use the official app stores like Google Play or the Apple App Store, which provide protection from the viruses. With Android, there are issues on Google Play because it's a lot more open system than the Apple one. But it's like everything. If the app or whatever service is being offered seems a bit too good to be true, or is not from the main provider from those services, then the chances are you're straying off the stable platform, the stable highway, and going down slightly dodgy roads, which then leads to apps that haven't been vetted properly and can be used to deliver the malware onto your devices. So try and stay away from unofficial apps and the like. If you become infected, if you're able to, run a full virus scan, providing your backup hasn't been encrypted and you have access to it, restore your backup data. Obviously, if you can't restore it, that may be some technical issues that need further investigation, but generally, if the system has been backed up correctly, it's not encrypted, and you've checked your processes to make sure you know how to do those, then you'll be able to get that data and information back on and get your system up and running again. One of the things you can find is you'll get unsolicited offers to clean your devices. Very often this is part of another a scam associated. It may even be the people who've encrypted your data in the first place. So hang up, don't use their services, don't call them back. If they give you any links or numbers to go or websites, then don't use them. And you can do some research in a different manner, but certainly don't respond to unsolicited offers and calls. And contact Action Fraud. If you think you've been subject to a ransomware attack, Action Fraud, www.actionfraud.police.uk. They do actually have quite a lot of advice on their website, and also highlight current issues or alerts, mainly around fraud, but there are obviously crossovers into the cyber world, and there may be updates there around the latest threats. There are on the website, there's an 0300 number to call in Scotland. They contact the police by dialing 101 if that is relevant to your particular area. One of the questions I did see earlier was, should I pay the ransom? And it says there, the NCSC encourages you not to pay the ransom for those reasons that are listed underneath. there's no guarantee you'll get access to your data or your computer. The computer will still be infected. You will be paying actually into criminal groups. And you could be targeted in the future. You've paid once. Why don't they keep an eye on you, see whether you've managed to recover your services okay, and if not, then they'll come back and do it again. Very often, there's two sort of ways of doing it. There's the opportunist ransomware, where they've got lucky, they've scattergun approached and sent out the malware, and they've just hit lucky with a particular company. But often there's organized crime groups that will use it as a deliberate tool. They will research companies, they will research networks, and they will then deliver the ransomware onto the system and try and obviously extort as much money as possible. And it's big business in certain areas of the world. And I think that generally is me. Wary of time, slightly run over, Callum. Sorry about that.
No problems at all, sir. No problems at all. Glamorous assistant Tom, what sort of Q&As do we have for Paul?
Cheers, Callum. Yeah, going quite a few. Top one at the moment is what along with advice we can give, but what are the basic symptoms for a ransomware attack? How do you know if you've been the victim?
That's a very good question. And actually, there's probably no one size fits all. A few years back, you would have probably got a pop-up box. I think I saw one of the questions saying, is the old NPS one doing the rounds, where a pop-up came up on the screen and said it was part of the Metropolitan Police Service, and that particular individual had been visiting naughty websites, and now that to unlock their computer, they had to pay a ransom, and they would do that. Otherwise, the police would come prosecuting you. That was obviously fake, not something that the MPS normally does. Now, as our guest caller found, it may well be that when you're trying to log into the system, you just can't get access. And it's then a case of digging to see what it is that you can't get access to. Is it the whole network? Is it just one computer? Is it your servers? Is it your web, your cloud access, if you have that? And very often there'll be a change in the signature of the files on the system, which may give you a clue. So it's not a doc file anymore, it's changed to something else. And often there's a note left in the file system, so people tend to find it's the IT support they have that comes in and is looking through the system to see what the issue is, and they find a note saying you've been hit. Sometimes they'll say with what ransomware, sometimes they won't. They'll usually say they want payment of some kind to recover the network or the files. As Katie said, that's usually in Bitcoin. And very kindly, they will give you advice and guidance how to buy Bitcoin if you're not used to doing that sort of transaction. So there can be, generally that's the latest style. There tends to be, you'll find that you won't be able to access your computer or data as you normally would. And with a little bit of digging, you'll find that the file signatures have been changed. And then somewhere there'll be a note saying exactly what's happened.
Interesting. Tom, anything else that's flagged up with lots of thumbs up from the questions?
Might be another one for Katie at the end, but top one, common network ports we're seeing ransomware spreading on?
Blimey. I'll have to pass that one just off the top of my head, and I'll do a bit of digging on that one. No
worries. I did see an older one. Are ransomware attacks growing, Paul? Do you know?
I don't know necessarily you would say they are growing. They're certainly being reported in much more prevalence than they used to be. And certainly I know from speaking to one of my colleagues in the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau, from live attacks they've had from the start of this year, they're up to around 160 since January. So There are definitely increased reporting in numbers. Whether they've always been there or just people are reporting now, it's still hard to say. And obviously you still get situations where people don't report, so it's hard to know the actual true number.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for that, Paul. Hopefully you can stay around, because what we're now going to do is we're going to open up to the Q&A. Hopefully we can get Katie and Rayhan back as well, and obviously glamorous assistant Tom still, to go through what questions we've got. I can see the Q&A just keeps on, every time I look at it, the numbers have increased. So if we can, as I said, if Katie and Rayhan can join us again. And Tom, what sort of questions are there out there for the Q&A? And remember, folks, if you see a question that you really want us to answer, make sure you give it that thumbs up, that tick, that like, so Tom can see it, because there's a lot of people out there that want to know questions, and we need to know what ones that you really want answered. So, Tom, what's the top?
Okay, top question. Are there any instances of attacks preventing access to cloud services such as Azure, AWS, the Amazon one, iCloud, OneDrive? That might Katie or Paul, I imagine, on that one. Katie, do you want to go first?
We have not seen that happen. However, I can absolutely see that being a thing. I think I've just seen another question that says, do you need to take a physical backup of files on OneDrive, iCloud, Dropbox, etc.? I would. I think it would be sensible to do that. I think it would be, we'd be overlooking it if we said, no, there's no chance and it's all safe up there. I would do the sensible thing back up. That might bring across the question, well, why use the cloud backup in the first place if I need to have a physical copy? That's something I'd leave to Amazon salespeople to answer.
From our perspective, so from the Met Police, from the protect advice that we give out to people is backup in at least 2 separate locations, one of which should be offline, because the argument's always been, if I've got access to your computer, then theoretically, if I'm in your computer, I can gain access to your cloud account as well through the connection that you've got. But if you've got a physical hard drive or USB stick that's physically in a cabinet over there, is unlikely that anybody can hack that. So even though we haven't had a huge amount of cloud services being hacked, it's still something we want to make sure that doesn't that you protect yourself against by having 2 backups in 2 separate locations.
I'll just add into that as well. If that there is guidance around how to utilise cloud services appropriately, and then again, that's on the National Cybersecurity Centre website.
Excellent, thank you. Tom, what else have we got, sir?
Is paying a ransom against the Bribery Act 2010? I don't know this one off the top of my head. Can anyone else shed light on that one?
Can I jump in there, Callum?
By all means, yeah.
The simple answer is no, and there'd be a lot of reasons for that. The current advice, certainly coming from the National Crime Agency, and NCSC will always engage with them, because NCSC is an intelligence service, it's not a law enforcement service. So from a law enforcement perspective, it's gone from an outright no, do not pay and under any circumstances, to actually there may well be situations where a payment may be made operationally, and that could include a threat to life or other similar criminal offence, or it may be that in certain circumstances a company has paid and actually got their information recovered in an expedient time to enable them to not lose out too badly in terms of operationally, money-wise, etc., and reputationally. So that there are situations when the police neither condone nor encourage payment. They operate on a risk basis of, they would recommend probably most of the time not to pay. However, there may be circumstances when a payment is appropriate for all the circumstances of that particular occasion.
Perfect answer. Thank you, Paul. Tom, what else have we got, sir?
What practical steps can small businesses take to try and prevent ransomware attacks?
Anybody want to come in there? Or? Yep, go for it. Yeah, by all means.
Again, you'll hear me say this a lot. The National Cybersecurity Centre website, on there's a small business guide. There's also a recent blog, Mitigating Malware and Ransom Attacks. It's a very, very useful site and guidance for small businesses, increasingly more so for the individual. But they're within the area I work in the National Cybersecurity Centre, it's called Economy and Society, and they are all about protecting small businesses, charities, public sector, retail, legal, pharma, and I could keep going on for about another 20 minutes. But there's plenty of advice and guidance on the websites, the National Cybersecurity websites, to engage with whichever area you're coming from. And certainly if you're a one-person, three-person business up to what SME is now, I forget the number, 250, something like that, they will have some guidance on there to help assist you.
Fantastic, thank you. One here that I saw, is there any info on data breach reporting or investigation by the ICO? What responsibilities to inform clients and third parties? And if anybody, obviously, if anybody else has anything they can say on this, by all means. But if you don't have access to your data, if a data breach has occurred, you have 72 hours from when you know a data breach has occurred before you inform the ICO. So that's important. So any form of ransomware, not having access to your data is still a data breach. So you will still need to inform the ICO within 72 hours of once you know that a breach has occurred. So that's one that I can sort of like pick up. We've got some, Rayhan, did you have any, what happened with you guys when you had the ransomware attack? What was your experience with the ICO?
The IT guys you're talking about?
No, the Information Commissioner's Office. Did you deal with them, or did somebody else in your company deal with them?
Like I said, I think David was leading that side, so I wouldn't be able to sort of kind of brief you on that. But while I was trying to get my system back so we can just carry on running as usual.
Gotcha. Do you know, actually saying that, with regards to the ransom, do you actually know whether the ransom was in Bitcoin or any other form of cryptocurrency, or did you guys not get that far?
I heard from David, I think they were like asked BT coins.
Okay, so it was Bitcoin as well.
It was, I think, Bitcoin, yeah. Just wanted to ask a question either to Katie or Paul. This is nothing to do with business, but I've actually had once, a ransom attack on my personal computer. So what I did, I actually took all the wires for 2 days, and then I started on safe mode, backdated the computer. It was all gone. Is that true now, or can that be?
So can you just repeat the last bit that you said, sorry, Rayhan, that you got it on your computer, but you put it into safe mode and then you rebooted it?
I've backdated my computer. 2 months backdated it before I had the antivirus installed on my computer, and it actually worked.
Oh, no, I've not heard of that as a solution, but that's a great thing if you got it back. I'd be curious what it was that was actually on the machine, because they're usually quite persistent, and they will hide in places. That means even if you roll back, they tend to still be there. So I think you got off really well there. That was a nice move to take.
I'm quite a suspicious person, so I thought I'm going to try that, and luckily it worked for me, to be honest.
Okay, another question that came up here. There are a lot of companies that offer incident response or ransomware recovery help. How does the MPS coordinate with these teams, or is it too many cooks? Bottom line, if your computer is locked through ransomware, the only people that can unlock your computer is pretty much going to be the people that locked it, the criminals in the first place. It's just too complicated, and without getting too technical about it, the length of password required cannot easily be cracked by anybody really less than GCHQ and NCSE level. Bottom line is, we do have nomoreransom.org is a fantastic free website that's out there, and I think Paul might have mentioned it briefly in his presentation. So nomoreransom.org, and we'll put the link in the chat. You can go there and you might be able to find some decryption keys for particular types of malware that are there. Thank you, Dave, for putting it in the chat. So if you are a victim of ransomware, as a last Hail Mary approach, to be totally honest, you could always try checking nomoreransom.org, and you might manage to find the decryption key for your ransomware. But I very much doubt that any other company out there is going to be able to get your data back, because it's just the decryption key is just too complicated for a generic tech company to be able to handle, I'm afraid. Any other questions we got, Tom? I appreciate we're running kind of low on time. Sorry.
Well, top one. As a lot of hackers operate overseas, China, Nigeria, etc., is there genuine and productive international cooperation in tracking down the hackers and prosecuting them without adequate punishment, given the results of their actions could have severe impacts just beyond just financial? For example, the impact on the NHS a few years back. So is there an international cooperation when it comes to investigating ransomware?
Short answer, yes, there is. We do liaise with Interpol, with FBI, with law enforcement agencies around the world, and we share information backwards and forwards as much as we can and much we're able to as part of the policies and procedures that our government and our police forces have in place with international police forces around the world. Paul, have you got anything else you can add to that?
Yeah, it is still quite hit and miss in terms of which part of the world you're dealing with. Obviously, from NCSC's point of view, they tend to deal at, shall we say, a higher level in terms of national threat state actors, which, for instance, they'll very occasionally come out and attribute certain attacks to certain people, such as the WannaCry area, and also I think you've seen incidents where our American colleagues, the FBI, have formally named on their wanted list perhaps a couple of GRU officers who they've attributed to making particular attacks. When you're getting at that level, it tends to be political. So it's very rare for actual law enforcement action to be able to be followed. Occasionally, in certain circumstances, there are operations that have been held over in the Baltic states where, yes, law enforcement will take action as and where they can, but it does tend to be complicated from whichever geographical area that it's coming from. Even with the United States and their legal system can be quite complicated sometimes.
Very, very true. So that is our webinar, folks. I'm really sorry we've run out of time. Thanks to all of you who have asked questions. I hope that we've answered them for you. I know we've run out of time. I know there were plenty more things on there, so we will try and do what we can to be able to get answers out to you later on. So one final request from me. At the close of this webinar, you'll all be taken to a survey to fill in. This should only take a minute or two, but it does greatly help us, not only in making sure that we're getting the right messaging out to the people, but that we're doing so in an effective way. We also have some resources to share with you. The Met Police, we have created what we call the Little Media series. This is a series of selection of leaflets and booklets and books and videos all about fraud and cybercrime, how to spot it and how to stay safe. These are all free at www.met.police.uk/little media. And the Cyber Griffin team have also created some amazing videos, all of which can be found on their YouTube channel. The links to which both of those should be appearing in the chat now. This webinar is part of a national policing series, which occurs every Monday and Thursday. To find out what's coming next, simply go to www.eventbrite.co.uk and type in national policing into the search bar. And then you'll see a list of all the upcoming webinars. I cannot recommend the work that my colleagues around the UK are doing enough. They are some amazing people doing some amazing work, but there are only 2 of these webinars left. So if you have the time, please have a look, see what interests you and register for them. So all that remains for me to do is to thank our guest today, Rayhan from Marine. Thank you. Some great insights from him today. Really highlighted that ransomware can have a significant impact on businesses and how important it is to have that plan in place before it happens. Also, thank you to Katie from the MPS Tech Unit, who gave us plenty of important advice, including the importance of disconnecting computers from the network and using a camera or a phone to take screenshots, especially any of payment addresses and so on and so forth. Then we heard from Paul from the NCSC, who very eloquently explained the risks around paying the ransom and the steps that businesses can take with regards to phishing emails and the importance of backups. Far too much information for me to summarize in just a few sentences. So thank you to Rayhan, Katie and Paul, and of course my quizmaster Tom. Also a thank you to Richard and Dave from the Cyber Griffin team for all their working behind the scenes in organising and setting up all of these webinars. And finally, a massive thank you to you all for joining us here today. I hope you found it useful, and remember, please fill out that survey once the webinar has ended. Thanks again, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you and bye.